Terrifying moments in Los Angeles. This is Sunday. A driver of a U-Haul truck plows into a crowd of people supporting those ongoing protests in Iran. The angry protesters responding by pounding on the U-Haul, shattering its windshield. That truck, though, eventually stopped. The driver was taken into custody. News Nation's Nancy Liu is live in Los Angeles. So, Nancy, what more can you tell us about what happened?
Well, Nicole, that U-Haul truck, it's been towed away. Thousands of protesters they have cleared, and charges are pending against the counter-protester who allegedly used that truck as a weapon. The crowd was estimated to be about 3,000 here outside the Wilshire Federal Building when the U-Haul truck came barreling through. This was around 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Remarkably, the incident caused no significant injuries among the demonstrators who had turned out in solidarity of protesters in Iran. On the side of the U-Haul was a banner that said, "No Shah, no regime, USA, don't repeat 1953, no mullah." When the U-Haul stopped, the crowd descended on the driver, who was eventually taken into police custody. According to the DOJ, the FBI is working with LAPD to determine the motive of the man in custody. Now, at this point, no charges in the case, as Mayor Karen Bass calls for all protest actions to remain peaceful. And here in LA, that also includes continued anti-ICE activity at the Federal Detention Center downtown. Nicole?
Nancy.
That is the main thing. Protests should remain peaceful. They said anti-protester, so he was probably on the other side. That's what it sounds like from the sign that he had on the U-Haul. So he was protesting for the opposite what the other protesters was doing. I don't know what was going through his mind. Why would you drive through the crowd? Maybe to make a stance or to get more visibility on his own protest, what he was protesting for. But he could have seriously hurt somebody. He could have seriously hurt somebody and even killed someone. So he has to be punished for that. But let's keep going.
Lou, live for us there in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
Let's go over into this next video and see what else we can learn.
President Trump says the U.S. is considering military strikes in Iran after weeks of anti-government protests there. Those violent protests have left more than 500 people dead. And over the weekend, a protest in Westwood took a violent turn when a U-Haul truck drove into a crowd of demonstrators. KTLA's Eric Spillman in the newsroom with the latest. Eric, good morning.
Morning, Jessica. L.A. has a large Iranian-American population. They're mostly people who left Iran just prior to the revolution of 1979. They support the demonstrations that are taking place in Iran right now. They oppose the Ayatollahs who control the country. Yesterday, they were having a demonstration in Westwood when all of a sudden it was interrupted by a man driving a U-Haul. Somehow, a man behind the wheel of a large U-Haul box truck managed to get through the barricades near the Federal Building on Wilshire Boulevard. He stepped on the gas and attempted to plow through a crowd of roughly 3,000 people who were there to voice their opposition to the Iranian regime. People screamed and jumped out of the way while others chased after the truck to try and get it to stop. When it finally did, the crowd attacked the driver with flagpoles and tried to beat him. Police eventually arrested the man. They say he may face a charge of assault with a deadly weapon. Amazingly, police say he only hit 2 people and neither one needed to be taken to the hospital for treatment. People at the rally say the truck had banners on it with messages of support for Iran's authoritarian rulers. The crowd ripped them down and pounded and kicked the vehicle before smashing the passenger side window. In all that chaos, police say the driver did suffer some injuries. Now, up until that happened, the event had been peaceful. People had gathered with flags and signs to show solidarity with anti-government protesters in Iran. They're hoping the demonstrations there will lead to the overthrow of the Iranian regime.
I'm trying to figure out what he expected. If it was either only two options. Either he was just trying to make a stunt and he was never planning to really hurt someone, or I'm assuming he could have hurt a lot more people. That is my thing. He could have hurt a lot more people if he would have just straight drove through. Luckily, it sounded like he had some kind of morals where he didn't just fly through, because it could have been a deadly scene. Could have been a very deadly scene. How do you expect the other protesters to react? You just drove a bus, don't caring if you hit somebody, because he obviously hit two people. Luckily, they weren't injured. But how do you expect them to react? Immediately started breaking the windows, trying to stomp on them. I can understand that reaction. Let's keep going.
Every time people go out to complain, they cut the internet and they start slaughtering people. And we're here to tell President Donald Trump, this is the time to back people up.
We're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options.
President on Air Force One saying he's considering military strikes against Iran. These scenes from Tehran show families at a morgue trying to identify relatives in body bags. By some estimates, as many as 2,000 people have been killed in the government's bloody crackdown against the unrest there. 10,000 people have been arrested, and the regime has shut down the internet and phone lines. The protests in Iran started last month over the collapse of the country's currency. The unrest has spread to every one of Iran's provinces. The country's parliamentary leader warns that if the U.S. intervenes, Iran may strike back at American military bases or ships, or that it may target Israel. However, at the same time, President Trump says Iran has sent a message that it wants to talk.
We may meet with them. I mean, a meeting is being set up, but we may have to act because of what's happening before the meeting. But a meeting is being set up. Iran called, they want to negotiate.
President Trump says he will meet with his advisors tomorrow to discuss the options on Iran. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the choices include military strikes, using secret cyber weapons, and more sanctions.
Breaking news, a deadly mass shooting.
We'll get over that later, but it's a crazy situation when the government shuts down. It's crazy to think about. The government shuts down the internet when there are people making their opinions known. No freedom of speech. Remember, this ain't the U.S. now. No freedom of speech. It's a crazy situation, and they kill the protesters. The question is, what will the U.S. do? Will they act, or will they wait for the meeting? It's a crazy situation no matter what. But let's go over into, how I like to do the AI breakdown so we can see anything else that we missed from the U-Haul plowing through the LA protesters. So like I said, it happened yesterday. The U-Haul drove through a large crowd of protesters. The demonstration is estimated to have 1,000 participants. And they were in support of anti-government protests in Iran. So the collision at approximately 3:30 p.m., the U-Haul driver reportedly bypassed the barricades and accelerated into a crowd. Video footage showed the demonstrators screaming and scrambling to avoid the vehicle. The truck was reportedly plastered with posters expressing support of the Iranian regime and opposing the Shah. Protesters were seen ripping these signs off the vehicles as it moved through the crowd. So amazingly, like they said, only 2 people were reported struck, and neither sustained life-threatening injuries. So after the truck was blocked, members of the crowd swarmed the vehicle, smashed the passenger side window, and kicked the windshield. Some protesters used flagpoles and other objects to strike the vehicle and the driver. So the Los Angeles Police Department detained the unidentified driver. The driver suffered some injuries during the confrontation with the crowd and escorted away by the police. The FBI is currently working with the LAPD to determine his motives. So it's what kind of charges might he face? So I remember they mentioned attempted well, no, not attempted, assault with a deadly weapon. So you got reckless driving, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, and other additional charges. The driver was detained and taken into custody after being treated for minor injuries sustained during the confrontation. He is currently being held without bail, while witnesses reported the truck was covered in pro-regime political messages. So it doesn't sound like he tried to stop it all, because look at this one statement here. He reportedly bypassed the barricades and accelerated into the crowd. So he didn't care if you lived or died. He was trying to make his stunt, his own violent, I would say maybe protest, you could call it a protest or violent demonstration, and trying to bring coverage to that, because he didn't care who he hurt. And that's the biggest way to make your voice known. Cause damage, mass fear, mass casualties. That's how you make, it's awful, but that's how the news picks up what you're trying to say. It's a crazy situation. It's a crazy situation, but let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. It's a crazy situation. We're going to have to cover more of the Iran protest. We're going to have to cover more. I'm probably looking at that tomorrow, but it's a crazy situation, y'all. Absolutely crazy situation. Let me know your thoughts and let me know if you have anything you want to say. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. But we're going to pivot.